We find that in Yeshua Messiah, our ancient adversary is finally defeated. This Barry fills for 10-minute Torah day 3 of Chukat. And we are going to spend one more day in chapter 19 of Numbers. And it's in verse 14 that we find the words, "This is the Torah: when a man dies in a tent, all who come into the tent and all who are in the tent are unclean for 7 days. Death has a way of influencing, affecting us all, even among the living who have not yet experienced death personally. We're tasting the effects of death somewhat. If we remember back in the book of Genesis, chapter number 2, it says here in verse 16 and 17, "And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die." I was thinking a little bit today about the initial experience of death. After Adam and Chava, or Adam and Eve, had tasted of the tree and they were expelled from the garden, they knew that at some point then that they would die. But never having seen anyone die, did they even really understand what that meant. Until Cain killed his brother Havel, or Abel, as we say. Now, if they were to have had the chance to look upon their son's dead body and realize this is what death looks like, I never considered that before today, that they were looking at their own flesh and blood. He's no longer breathing. He's no longer functioning in any manner. And they're looking at him and there's no life there. Maybe in their mind they're thinking, so this is what it's like. And eventually at some point, even though it was 900 plus years later, they tasted of that death reality. To have the phone call or to receive the message your loved one has passed away, there's this sudden thump in the chest and a stunned reality that comes over you. And your mind tries to process the words that you've heard. And you just think, it can't be true. I must be dreaming. This doesn't make sense to me. To walk through the processes that we have culturally here of putting to rest the body and grieving with the family and going through all of that, you realize that death is an adversary, especially when it's a young and innocent life that is taken. When it's a tragic and an unjust means to the end of life. These things just compound and double the impact. It says in the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter number 15, verse 24 and following, then the end, when he delivers up the reign to Elohim the Father, when he's brought to naught all rule and all authority and power, for he has to reign until he has put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy, it says in verse 26, to be brought to nothing or to be brought to naught is death. Death is the final foe. Yeshua indeed conquered death, being the first fruits of the resurrection. Life is the answer to death. More on that in a moment, but let's read a couple other scriptures here. In the book of the Revelation of Yeshua, it says in verse 17, chapter 1, and when I saw him that is yoke and unsought, Yeshua, I fell at his feet as dead, and he placed his right hand on me, saying, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, and the living one. And I became dead, and see, I am living forever and ever. Amen. And I possess the keys of Sheol and of death. Yeshua thankfully conquered death for us. I don't know that we really understand what that means. In the book of Hebrews, in chapter number 2, it says in verse 14, therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself similarly shared in the same, so that by means of his death he might destroy him having the power of death, that is the devil. The aspect of death, we have attributed that to the work of Satan. It is the process of life. But it would seem that our adversary, spiritual adversary, promotes the power of death in order to intimidate us and to put us into a state of fear. But in 1 John chapter 3, it says, verse number 8, the one doing sin is of the devil, because the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of Elohim, Yeshua, was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. This work of intimidation, this work of putting fear in our life at the prospect of death. Nobody wants to die. We all want to live, and I guess the most popular thought pertaining to death is it going to hurt? How many times have we heard someone say, I just want to pass away in my sleep? What an easy way to go. Some people die peacefully. Some people die tragically, terrible deaths, painful deaths, and this is extremely hard on us. But fear of death does not have to rule over us, for as I said, the answer to death is life. So we live. While we have life, we live. I've seen people who basically live a non-existent, non-participating life before death comes. It's non-consequential. They're putting nothing into it. They're just existing until they die. That's tragic. So until that moment where life leaves this vessel that we've been given, we animate this body with the best of ourselves. We allow our spirits to grow. We seek to mature. We seek to become filled with Him and His presence and His Spirit. We seek to take this word and live it out. We seek to be influential. We want to have impact. We want to make waves on the pond, as Laura and I talk about often, leaving deep footprints in the earth. You want to be a mover or shaker, making something happen that is righteous and good. You can't, do that every minute you live, maybe not even every day, but we frequently look for our opportunity to live and to demonstrate the life of Yeshua that lives in us. But even when the body dies, because we have the reality, not just the hope of, but the reality of the resurrection, Yeshua being the first fruits of the resurrection, we know that though we die in this flesh, yet in this flesh, in a resurrected version of this flesh, we shall yet live, and we shall see our King. We shall dwell with Him in His kingdom. My father, he died about 5 years ago, and I miss him. I yearn for him. I long to talk to him. But not just the hope, but the reality that I will see him again in the kingdom and rejoice with him that both of us have won, that death has been defeated, that we have overcome, and that Yeshua has provided the means of life for us. That would be a good day then. May we all be there for that day. Until tomorrow, shalom.